Good morning. My name's Gary Williams. I'm the product manager for cybersecurity, for communications, and for our safety and control systems. Today I'm with Jay Abdullah, who's the manager of the cybersecurity team in EMEA. We'd like to introduce you to the security side of Foxboro Evo, and we're going to concentrate on these 3 questions that we've gleaned from our clients. So first, I need to protect my plant from cybersecurity risks. Foxboro Evo is designed from the bottom up with security in mind. It allows the client to centrally manage all aspects of security. And I'm going to hand over to Jay, and he'll give you a brief of how they would do this.
Thank you, Gary. With respect to the technology that Gary's talking about, we're specifically indicating the fact that we have to manage the system from a security perspective centrally. So with that being said, in our Protect slide here, we're talking about 2 different technologies. These technologies are now part of the Foxboro Evo Secure Edition, one of which is built right in, and that's the Active Directory component. The EPO component, which we'll talk about a little bit later, is by Mcafee, and that is considered an optional component. However, just to talk initially about the control and automation perspective from a centralized management console, we're talking specifically about Microsoft Active Directory. So as you can see on the screen behind me, we've got the primary components up and running. To just give you a little bit of an example about what it looks like to centrally manage a system. Now, when we're talking about standards, and we'll talk about that question in just a couple of seconds, we're specifically indicating the fact that we have to maintain centralized authentication, authorization, and accounting. That's called the AAA protocol. So as you can see over here, we've got the organizational units built for the domain controller with specific user IDs based on role-based access control. Over on the bottom left-hand side, you can see one of the primary components, and that's the sites and services component. That's specifically what indicates which servers are responsible for which sites. And then over here on the right-hand side, we've got the group policy management console. This particular console indicates all of the different policies that we've got created right out of the box that help you to assign to either users or computers. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a couple of seconds once we start assigning some of these security policies to the individual users within the environment.
Okay, so now let's discuss the second demand. It says here, I need to meet new regulations and standards. Foxboro Evo is built and driven by those standards. Our research and development department are actually driven by those standards, but the standards are constantly changing. This year alone, we've had 3 new standards. So Foxboro Evo has been designed so that the client can choose the standard of his choice. It's normally driven by geographical or country, but whatever compliance that they decide on, whatever standard, Foxboro Evo will enable them to become compliant. Jay, can you give us an example when you've done this with one of our clients, please?
Absolutely, Gary. With regards to the standards, we're seeing specifically in Europe and the Middle East that ISA 99 or IEC 62443 are becoming very, very popular. They're actually becoming so critical that we have to maintain that same compliance even through the proposals process. So what we've done with some of our clients in the past is implement the ISA 99 and over the ISO 27001 Information Security Management System framework. So what I'd like to show you is one of those primary components in a little bit more detail, and that's going back to the AAA protocol that we talked about just a couple of seconds ago. And again, that's authentication, authorization, and accounting. So as you can see, we've still got the same screen up that we had before that indicates the specific policies that are based on the specific users or the specific computers. So what I'll do is I'll flip over to the other computer that's currently acting as a standard engineering workstation or an operator workstation. And as you can see, I've got some administrative tools up and running. Down on the bottom right, I've got the date and time where I can make all of the modifications to these functionalities as I see necessary. Up here, we've got the administrative tools section of the control panel, and down on the bottom left, we've got the Registry Editor, specifically depicted here by the 5 registry hives, which is basically the spinal cord of the Windows operating system. Any modifications to this registry can have some serious impact on the system. So obviously, for operators, we don't want them having the ability to make these kinds of modifications. So what I'll do is I'll specifically close these out, and I'll simply log off of the system. And as you can see, we go back to a login screen. Now, this is the same exact computer that we were just on a couple of seconds ago. The only difference is, rather than logging on as an administrative user, I'm logging on as an operator. The operator, obviously, based on those role-based access controls, which are specifically identified in ISA 99 and 62443, indicate that I should not have the ability to make modifications to the Windows operating system. So down here, when I try and modify the time and date settings, obviously I'm getting a restriction. The first thing that you'll notice is that all of the icons are gone. Another thing you may notice is when right-clicking, the context menu is completely disabled. Over here on the Start menu, everything is completely blank, and as a matter of fact, I as an operator don't even have the ability to shut down the system. The only thing that I can do is specifically view the Fox View panel, control my plant, do the job that I was hired to do, and not even turn this system off so that we can maintain the highest availability possible for those operators. Gary?
Okay, so the final demand is I need to manage the increasing complexity and system components and protect them. So Foxboro Evo, like your computers at home, need to be updated on a regular basis. The cybersecurity environment is changing and being threatened on a daily basis, not only by hackers, but malware and also viruses. With Foxboro Evo in, no matter how many workstations you've got, you can centrally manage it from one computer. So from the server, you can download the latest patches and distribute accordingly. And Jay, can you give us an example of that one?
Absolutely. So the technology that we're going to shift to now is Mcafee Epo. Now again, this is an optional component, but in all honesty, I wouldn't walk away from a proposal without considering Mcafee Epo as the central repository for antivirus and anti-malware management. So with that being said, we talked a little bit earlier about these two technologies that we'll explore. With regards to the centralized Windows patch management, which is the operating system management, that's a component called WSUS. It's provided by Microsoft. That's not one of the topics that we'll cover today, but the specific centralized and patch management distribution tool that we'll use is Mcafee Epo, which we've got up and running right here. Now this is called the Executive Dashboard. So obviously this dashboard is completely customizable based on your needs. A plant manager can literally go to this particular dashboard, export all of the settings, make a nice printout on a weekly basis, and hand it to executive management. They can literally see the security status of every single Windows device on their network from one single screen. On the top left-hand corner, we can see the Mcafee Agent Compliance Summary, which basically is the communication software tool between the client and the server. On the bottom left, we've got the definition adoption, which basically means this is the total number of systems that are compliant versus non-compliant with the latest updates. On the top right-hand side, we've got a malware detection history. Thankfully for us, this particular one says there's no results returned on the query, which is a good thing. And on the bottom right-hand side, we've got the VSE top 10 most detections, which shows us how many of these systems are consistently getting some kind of malware detection. Obviously, as you can see just a couple of seconds ago, it did an automatic refresh, which is great. You don't actually have to sit there and consistently keep up with it. Another thing that I'd like to show you on the system tree side is a global view of all of the stations that are included within your environment. So the previous tool that we showed you was the Microsoft Active Directory console. The nicest thing about this endpoint protection product is the fact that it integrates directly with Microsoft Active Directory. So as you can see, the same structure that we had on the Active Directory side is being imported here into EPO, which means we've got the same visibility on the endpoint protection side as we do on the AAA authentication side. Over here, it's giving us very critical information such as system name, whether or not it's being managed, the IP address, which are the last or the most recent usernames that have logged on to the system, when it was last updated, which product versions you're running in terms of the endpoint protection suite. So this particular suite is not just doing antivirus. Antivirus and definition-based updates are a thing of the past. If we're specifically relying on signature-based updates to protect our system, then we're going down the wrong path. We really start having to protect our systems from a zero-day vulnerability perspective, which means we have to have things like host intrusion prevention, we have to have data loss prevention, which helps us to block the USB ports, the CD-ROMs, etc. And of course, we have to have the systems solidified. Over here on the right-hand side, you can see that the solid core application is enabled and the system has been solidified, which literally means that once we have verified the integrity of the system, we lock it down into a solidified state, which means any user that tries to execute an older file by just simply modifying some structure within it or copying and pasting a new one will be completely blocked whether or not they have an updated definition. And that's really one of the final steps to help us to protect against malicious software.
So in conclusion, Foxboro Evo is secure. It's dynamic and can be used to meet any compliance around the world. It gives the client, enables them to manage it from a central point, and it is one of the best on the market.